What's going on, everybody? We have a lot to look at today. So BTBT Bit Digital released their earnings. We did just get a fill of our gaps. We also have some Microstrategy news we'll talk about. And then we have someone that says that the real rally hasn't even started for Bitcoin. So we'll look at what's going on there. And then I'll give you my thoughts on the Bitcoin miners, Bitcoin, and profitability, what we're all waiting for. While some people are really worried about the Bitcoin miners, fixated on price right now, I couldn't be happier with them from a company standpoint. In Q4, the most part, Bitcoin miners have been profitable. We still have some miners that have to report Q3. We have to get that quarter out of the way, where Bitcoin basically was around an average of 60,000, leaving the Bitcoin miners unprofitable. Now with Q4, which contains October, November, and December, Bitcoin has been in an average much higher in price versus Q3, and that should really help the Bitcoin miners. Q4, in my opinion, is shaping out to be a good quarter for them. And as we continue through it with Bitcoin holding 90,000, it's looking even better and better. So while some people are feeling bad about the Bitcoin miners price-wise and feeling negative about it, I personally couldn't be more bullish on them. But anyways, let's talk about this Microstrategy news. Microstrategy buys $4.6 billion worth of Bitcoin, and this is a 51,780 Bitcoin. They now hold 331,000 Bitcoin. But basically, how did MicroStrategy fund this? Well, with dilution. What you have to ask yourself is, will Bitcoin's price increase make up for that dilution they just did? I do think so. As of November 17, they reported about $15 billion worth of shares still available for sale. This was the largest purchase for MicroStrategy of Bitcoin, and it rose their realized price of Bitcoin to 49,000 rather than 42,000. And the percentage of Bitcoin owned by MicroStrategy alone is now 1.674% of the overall supply. MicroStrategy is obviously holding more Bitcoin than any of the top Bitcoin miners. And I have something interesting said by Michael Saylor. I don't think it's going to 60,000. It is not going to 30,000. I think it's going to go up from here. That's one thing we have to question is, where is next crypto winter low going to be? We're not seeing 15,000 ever again. Are we going to see 30,000 ever again? I don't think so. 60,000? Maybe not. That is why you need to take advantage of the bear market. Take advantage of when Bitcoin is cheap, when no one wants it, when people say we're going to wait till it goes lower. That's when you want to accumulate it. It is a lot harder to accumulate Bitcoin for 90,000 versus buying for 20,000 not that long ago in reality. And that's another thing to realize is that 450 Bitcoin produced per day, it's a lot easier for the market to eat that up if it's a $20,000 Bitcoin versus being a $150,000 Bitcoin down the road. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves there. Now I do want to talk about MSTR on the chart. We do have a gap down here in the 280s. This is one thing I'm watching out for is bearish divergences. For example, back in March of 2024, we saw the chart go higher. However, the RSI has already topped out and is going lower. And that did mark the top there for that bull phase. And again, let me show you another bearish divergence. This happens a lot with MicroStrategy. It topped out right here, but the RSI was steadily dropping. That was another sign we were topping out and we headed lower. And then on the downside, we actually saw a bullish divergence that marked the bottom. We saw the price starting to rise. The RSI was still going lower. So one thing you should watch out for is those bearish divergences. For example, if we start going higher here and continue trending up while the RSI keeps cooling down, that might be a sign we're due to cool down. I would be looking for a good buy right here in the fill of this gap. That would be a fantastic place to add some MicroStrategy. Be aware that it has gone up massively. I still do expect it to outperform Bitcoin, and it's already done the vast majority of its great performance from the Bitcoin bottom. It's already done a 2,500%, a little more than that actually. This is why you accumulate when no one wants it. This is why you accumulate during crypto winter, during 2022. During next cycle, 2026, 2027, this is when you want to be accumulating while everyone else is worried about Bitcoin. This is when you want to be running towards it. When everyone else is running towards it, this is when you want to start reassessing, consider taking some profits. And the same can be said about MicroStrategy. Now, looking at BTBT, they did report their earnings. They did miss their EPS, they missed their revenue expectation, and they are expecting an unprofitable quarter coming up, but a nice growth in revenue. And I personally think this quarter will end up being profitable as long as Bitcoin holds on to its gains, and dare I say even go higher. Now one reason this might be initially dropping here is also because CoinMint is dropping their hosting agreement, but one thing we do have here chart wise is a fill of both gaps. We did go to literally fill our gap right here in the 3s, and we already did fill our gap here in the 450 area last week I should say. So now that we have these gap fills, I do think we are cleared to go higher. However, we might cool down a little bit more. We might retest our 50 MA that we bounced off of after we filled this gap. We might test that 50 MA down here in the high 3s. But in my opinion, BTBT is going to continue its bullish overall trend. Just follow this pattern, and I think this is what we're going to see until, the end of this bull run. Based on this pattern, I would expect to see $8 at some point in 2025. And based on the fact that I expect all the Bitcoin miners to be profitable for the majority of 2025, possibly Q4. However, BTBT looks like they are not expecting a profitable Q4. All right, now I want to talk about this analyst that thinks Bitcoin has not topped out. He says governments, banks, and corporations will push Bitcoin higher in 2025. One thing he cites is corporations, companies like MicroStrategy, others confirming that they own Bitcoin. The large majority of these companies in the US haven't entered the crypto market, even with these ETFs. And then big banks. While the biggest institutions like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan are dipping their toes into Bitcoin, they still only possess marginal amounts, very small amounts. I think above all this is the cycle, following the 4-year cycle. Bitcoin has done this 100% of the time. It has topped out in the year following the halving 100% of the time. To expect it not to top out in 2025, this cycle, to expect that it's already topped out, when we have so much going on, when we have so much buy pressure from ETFs, when we have whales loading up on chain, when now we just have some interesting activity with alts. I do think alt season is slowly kicking on. It is a little early still, but we're starting to see some interesting activity from these random altcoins as people take some profits from Bitcoin and try to disperse it around into other things that might run. Now, speaking of Bitcoin, I want to kind of show you guys, this is Q3, this is Q4. For most of Q3, Bitcoin was, I'd say, at an average of 60,000. It went all the way down to 49,000. If you guys remember back in August, it went all the way up to about 69,000, but it has been in that range. I would say it was about an average $60,000 through Q3, which would mean unprofitable for the Bitcoin miners. Bitcoin has to be somewhere over 70,000 for them to be profitable. Before the halving, they had to be at least over something like $30,000 Bitcoin to be profitable. Now that we got through the halving, rewards being cut in half, Bitcoin basically has to be double in price for them to be profitable. Bitcoin has to be over 70,000s, and Bitcoin is well over the 70,000s. And so far in Q4, I'd say its average price was probably 70,000, somewhere, give or take. If we continue, up here, if we continue sideways, I'd say our average would probably be more like 75, 76. If we pump more and get towards 100K and kind of hold 100K, our average over this quarter would probably be closer to the 80,000s. But so far, in my opinion, so good. It does look like the Bitcoin miners are set for a profitable quarter, despite BTBT not expecting that. I think they're playing it safe, and if we do drop from here, which could definitely happen, we have ran a bit, if we do drop, retest the 70s, it is possible that some of these Bitcoin miners post unprofitable quarters for Q4. Here's a Bitcoin miner you're going to really want to watch for earnings, because when they report their earnings, we're already going to be basically done with Q4. They're reporting their earnings at the end of December, basically. And this is going to go over Q3, but we're already at the end of December. You basically know what Q4 is going to be like because you saw what Bitcoin traded at from October, November, and most of December. So you should have a great idea on forward guidance. These companies that report later and later into the quarter should have a great idea on what they expect for Q4, what they expect for forward guidance after they give Q3. I would expect CleanSpark to expect profitability as long as Bitcoin holds on to its gains, or at the very least doesn't drop back into the low 70s. Otherwise, I think there's a small chance of profitability, but if we hold on to our gains, or dare I say go higher, I think Bitcoin miners are going to see a profitable Q4. One thing I'm watching with CleanSpark is this consolidation. I think we're going to tighten up a little bit more until Bitcoin goes on its next breakout, or until we get past more earnings and the environment looks a little better for the Bitcoin miners. So far, things have looked iffy. Last quarters have been unprofitable for basically all the Bitcoin miners. After they got through the halving, they went back to unprofitability. That put fear back into Wall Street. That made Wall Street think, oh, these Bitcoin miners aren't going to do that great. We have the rest of this Bitcoin cycle for the Bitcoin miners to post profitability. I'd expect they have at least a couple of profitable quarters before we end this cycle. And that is where things get exciting again. If you guys remember, the first time CleanSpark posted a profit, it caused a huge gap up. We went from under like $8. They posted earnings, we went all the way into the 20s. Just based on finally a profitable quarter again after being unprofitable since 2021. So I am expecting, once they give some good profitable expectations, we are going to rally, we are going to break this 25. And to me, that's some point in 2025. and I will be trimming and taking some profits along the way, along with the other Bitcoin miners, along with alts in 2025. This is when you want to build up your cash pile in preparation of crypto winter. Things might play out differently this cycle, but I am still expecting Bitcoin to follow its 4-year cycle. I am still expecting crypto winter in 2026, 2027. That is when we want to have cash ready to buy these Bitcoin assets, the alts, the Bitcoin miners. Buy them all while no one wants them. Buy them when they're so cheap. That is when you get the most multiples. But let me know how you guys are feeling about today. How are you feeling about the Bitcoin miners price-wise? And how are you feeling about them company-wise? Because there is definitely a difference. And if you feel good about them company-wise, I'd rather have that than to feel good about them price-wise. If I was worried about them as a company and they were rallying in price, I would be much more likely to sell and get out. If they are not going up in price and they are looking great as a company, I'm much more likely to add and be bullish on them. And this is one of those times to be bullish on them, in my opinion. But what say you? Do you think the Bitcoin miners are going to end this cycle profitable or not? I do think most of 2025 will see some profitable quarters from all of the Bitcoin miners. And this is when things truly get exciting. This is when they build up their balance sheet, build up their Bitcoin balances, continue to hodl. And we get that piling in just like last cycle, when the market realizes that these Bitcoin miners are pulling in money hand over fist, pulling in profitability again. That is when the excitement continues. Thanks as always for watching, guys. Hopefully you have a good Monday. Hopefully things go pretty good by the end of the day and we look at a nice green day. I would expect Q4 that we end up higher in price with the Bitcoin miners and with Bitcoin. I think we will at the least test 100K before the year ends. Whether we end above it or not, who really knows in the end. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.